Bedtime stories for adults. If, like me, some of your fondest memories are of being tucked in and hearing a favorite story as you drifted off to sleep, you'll love this channel. Here, you'll find gentle bedtime readings of my own books, narrated by my assistant May, in a soft, soothing voice designed to help you relax. No jarring sound effects, no sudden noises, just calm, feel good stories to ease you into sleep. If you enjoy these stories and would like to support the channel, you can also find all of my books available on Amazon. The king smiled and returned to amusing himself teasing me. So, Dawn, where are we off to on our first adventure in retirement? The king walked to the back of the couch in front of the fireplace, jumping in the air and landing perfectly on the red velvet couch without spilling a drop of his wine. And even the couch cushion on the arm seemed to catch his head and tilt his crown over his eyes. I gulped down my wine, put the cup on the table, and said, "Hunting, Your Majesty." "Ah, hunting," the king said fondly, while holding his wine glass high in the air above him as he lay on the couch. "Would that I could go, wine women and singing at Goldshire, wolves and spring bears in Elwyn Forest, and those pretty speckled trout in that lake. What was it again, Sergeant?" "Crystal Lake, Your Majesty," I reminded. "Ah, yes!" "Crystal Lake," he said as he took a sip of his wine. "I simply can't get away. Oh, but thank you for the invite, Don. You did mean to invite me, didn't you?" he said while lifting his crown off his eyes and looking at me for a reaction. "Oh, yes, Your Majesty, always, Your Majesty. I would be honored, Your Majesty." I quickly stammered out and gave a bow. "Wait! Hunting!" The king interjected and sat up, put his wine on the table, and glared at me as if he just had an amazing idea. With a huge smile on his face, he pointed in the direction of Valdor's quarters. "You just came from seeing Valdor, and you asked him to go hunting, didn't you?" he accused with a smile on his face and walking toward me now. "And you mentioned chili, didn't you?" said the king, with a wide gaping smile on his face, and his figure pointed to my face. "I forgot, Your Majesty," I grumbled out grudgingly. "Ha! Ha!" The king roared with laughter. "Oh, Don, you are such a troublemaker, he'll be grumbling to himself for the next week." The king managed to get out while in the midst of a laughing fit. "I am sorry, Your Majesty, it was so long ago." I started and was quickly interrupted by King Anduin. "I was 16, I believe," the king said while grabbing his wine and returning to the couch. "Only just, Your Majesty, it was a week after your name day. I started and was interrupted again by the king. "Oh, please, Sergeant," the king said and stood. "Let me tell the story? I get to tell so few," he asked as he smiled. "Oh, please, Your Majesty," I requested. The king paced around the room as he continued. "Now let's see. We were in this very room I was here. You were there, and Valdor was on the other side of you there." The king pointed around the room as he continued. "You were trying to convince me to let Chili, your pet, join the royal guard when we got the news that a band of Rouge trolls had captured Goldshire." The king continued. Without a word, I grabbed my sword. The king pointed at his famous sword Valor, whistled for my griffin, and hopped out that window there. The king walked to the window. "To my horror, Your Majesty, you flew off like a shot. It was all Chili, Valdor, and I could do to scramble the men and get us all mounted on horseback and get after you while keeping you in sight," I said as I walked over to him and looked out the window with him. "But horses are no match for a griffin's speed, Your Majesty, so while riding, Valdor held his hand out to the sky and muttered some magic to slow down your griffin," I informed. "Did he really?" questioned the king. "You know, Sergeant, I had that griffin killed. Thought him too slow to be in my service. I must have a talk with Valdor." "Anyway," the king continued, "I had just dismounted my griffin and was stomping toward Goldshire when this huge white beast of a polar bear jumped in front of me, blocking my path, and you yelling from a good ways back to stop and wait. Impertinent bear. I remember thinking I should have his head." The king looked at me. "That is, until he grabbed that troll out of the tree above me and ate him." Not spotting that troll, that's when the voice of reason hit me, and I decided to wait for my men. "A wise move, Your Majesty," I said. "And you held me back while the men charged in, Sergeant." The king gave me a stern look. "Only till the arrows stopped flying, Your Majesty. Then I knew I had to let you go get your pound of flesh." "And I got it, didn't I, Sergeant? I cleaved that troll chieftain in half. The king made a fist as he smiled. A beautiful swing, your majesty. I complimented. Now let's see. Ah, yes! And while the men cleaned and repaired Goldshire and buried the dead, Chili, you, Valdor, and I went and set up camp. The king said while continuing his pacing around the room, I was overseeing my tent being put up, you were building a nice fire, and Chili and Valdor were in the rapids fishing. When Valdor's rod bent and he hoisted a huge, beautiful salmon out of the river, with Chili's lips just barely attached to its tail. One quick and mighty tug from Valdor, and the fish flew out of Chili's lips and hit Valdor in the face. The king chuckled as he continued. Valdor got control of the fish and was... I interrupted. Bent over taking the hook from its mouth and had the tail of the fish straight behind him. I quickly interjected. Chili was just trying to take his fish back. Your Majesty. Ah, so you've said many times, Sergeant, but not all of us saw it that way. The king smiled as he waved his finger at me for interrupting. Anyway, a great chomp and a blood-curtailing scream from Valdor and the fish and half of Valdor's ass were gone. The king fell back onto the couch, holding his chest and silently guffawing with laughter. Then he composed himself and continued the story. You, Sergeant, jumped into the rapids, picked up Valdor, threw him over your shoulder, and ran to Lady Fielder's house and busted down her front door. No time for pleasantries, Your Majesty. I had to get that bleeding stopped. I know, Sergeant. And by the time I got to the front door, you had Valdor pinned to the dining table naked, holding him with one hand and shoveling hot coals from the fire onto his ass with the other, while he screamed bloody murder. The king stopped, turned, and looked at me. That tough old conger never did pass out, did he, Sergeant? No, Your Majesty. He was the same disagreeable self the whole time, I stated with respect to my friend. Ha! And then Lady Fielder had no sewing thread, so the two of you sewed him up with strips of buckskin. The king bent over laughing, almost falling to the floor, and continued. I teased him for months. Sergeant kept telling him to go take a bath. He smelled of old leather. The king, laughing uncontrollably, stumbled to the couch and threw himself on it. The king, now wiping tears from his eyes from laughing, said, Ah, thank you, Sergeant. It felt good to laugh again. It was my honor, Your Majesty, I said with a bow. Oh, and, Your Majesty? Yes, Don, he said. As much as it would be my honor to have His Majesty join me on a hunt, it would be more of an honor if my friend Anduin came in your stead, Your Majesty. I again bowed. The king sat there composed and with a serious face and said, No, Sergeant, the honor would be his. The king then nodded to me as if to say thank you for the kind words and friendship. Author's note. Some of you may think I portrayed young Anduin as a bit too playful in this scene. And yes, normally he's the picture of royal posture and polished dignity. But here, it's just two old friends talking. For a brief moment, Anduin lets himself relax, dropping the crown, the ceremony, and the 20-pound royal stick that's usually lodged somewhere uncomfortable. With the sergeant, his former personal guard, and let's be honest, the closest thing he ever had to a father figure, he could afford to be human. I also confess, I enjoyed writing this scene far more than I should have. I was laughing to myself the entire time, acting out gestures in my chair like a deranged stage performer. If anyone had walked in, they would have assumed I'd finally snapped. Wild hand movements, random voices, and a suspicious amount of giggling. I must have looked utterly mad. But hey, that's writing. Bedtime stories for adults. If, like me, some of your fondest memories are of being tucked in and hearing a favorite story as you drifted off to sleep, you'll love this channel. Here, you'll find gentle bedtime readings of my own books, narrated by my assistant May, in a soft, soothing voice designed to help you relax. No jarring sound effects, no sudden noises, just calm, feel-good stories to ease you into sleep. If you enjoy these stories and would like to support the channel, you can also find all of my books available on Amazon.